a very, very warm welcome also on the side of BMW to this wonderful gallery weekend. And as Klaus said, you know, it's about the galleries, it's about the art, and it's about the conversations that you will be having. If we can, you know, generate some of these dialogues that you will be having with each other, we'll be very happy, you know, to have contributed something to this weekend. Without further ado, I'm really pleased and happy to welcome Grace Yao, all the way from California, I believe a software engineer for many, many years, and now she's a multiple entrepreneur, I want to say, in the field of the arts, which has its own challenges, but we will be hearing more about that from András, obviously, in the conversation. And as Klaus has already announced, you know, we have the president of the, I had to look it up in English, the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation, with over 2,000 employees and amazing budget that we'll hear about. Marion Ackermann, the new president, or for some years already, but great, thank you. And András, Szántó, of course, who I want to introduce a little longer, because you are not only the moderator. This talk is called The Future of the Art World, because that is the last book of your trilogy. You wrote a book about the future of museums, you wrote a book about the future of the architect, the institution of the museum, and now it's the future of the art world. You have been a very prolific writer, journalist, obviously, from art newspaper to the New York Times. You are a cultural strategist. You've worked with Audemars Piguet, you've worked with us, you've worked with Stanford University, you have a PhD from Columbia. I mentioned that because many in the room probably know Arthur Szántó, who was your father for your PhD thesis. And I think coming from Budapest, you wrote a best-selling book already at the age of 25 or something in Hungary. So now it is because of this trilogy that has come to an end, in which you interviewed dozens and dozens of people in the art world. Marion is in the book about museums, and so many others also in this audience have been contributing to these interviews, and they're also available. You know, if you want to go crazy shopping, Hartje Kans has a table here, and you're more than welcome, obviously, in case you like the talk, you know, to jump in further into the discussion that we will be having. On the side of BMW, just one thing: we've been active in the arts for over 50 years with hundreds of initiatives worldwide. The Gallery Weekend obviously being one of them here in Berlin. Also, I invite you all to the Opera for All, which also has been going on already for 2 decades. On May 23rd and May 24th, you can enjoy a free concert on Bebeplatz, conducted by Telemann, or watch Verdi's Nabucco. If you're still in town, that would be great. It's something that we love to enable. And it was nice of Klaus to mention BMW as a partner of the price of the National Gallery, but Volkswagen, and this is a shout out from BMW to Volkswagen, is also a partner. Benita von Malzahn is here, and we are just very happy to both be partners of this amazing institution. I'm going to stop myself right here. András, pass on to you, and let's get the show on the road. There'll be a loop, I hope, of many, many images. So if you're bored with our faces, you can just look up and look at what it is that we do, because Grace contributed pictures, András did, I did, and so did Marion, you know, to give you an idea of what it is that we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. Can you hear this? Yeah. First of all, I'm so happy there's peace and love between BMW and Volkswagen. It was great to hear. How could you choose, right? So yes, I do have a little bit of notes, so thank you very much. Thomas has been a great friend. We actually did work on an initiative together, this one, the BMW Art Journey, which is a lot of fun. I want to thank the Neue Nationalgalerie team. We know how hard it is to do this, and the BMW team and everybody who's been part of it. And I know Klaus is probably already gone, but he is, of course, himself engaged in a small museum experiment across the street. So the future of the museum is happening around the corner soon. And then, of course, thank you to the contributors to the books. Some are here. I don't know if Mark Spiegler here. I know Stefan Schütz is here from the second book. Joram Roth, I think, might be from Fotografiska here. And of course Marion and Thomas, both in the book series. And I really want to thank Hartje Kans and Lena Kiesler and everybody at Hartje Kans for, you know, making these books. And it's really great to celebrate in the city where it was published, because, you know, we started our first celebration in New York, where I live, at the Guggenheim, in this architectural masterpiece. So this is the sort of bookend moment in another architectural masterpiece. So when Thomas and I have talked about my books, he always says all 3 books really come down to one sentence, which is get off your high horse. I think you have summarized my 3 books with this simple message. And I appreciate that very much. In a way, there's a lot of truth in that. And as a high-level summary, maybe it's not bad, but there's a little bit more to it than that. So I just want to say a few words about really the message of these 3 books, which for me have been sort of a realization, a series of realizations. So the first book I did, which was with a group of museum directors, including Marion, made me realize that museums are sort of running on new software. These are not the museums that I grew up with, or we grew up with. These are not the museums that you here in Berlin invented on Museum Island. It's a very different beast. They are more inclusive, more democratic, more open, more welcoming, more for everybody. They are hubs of community life connected to other parts of the world, connected to other forms of knowledge. The museum has become this sort of open entity, at least aspirationally. And that was sort of the message of the first book. And it does require a different attitude, not so much top-down, but more lateral, welcoming museum. The second book, which was about architecture, and you can buy it back there, also came with the realization, which is that museum architecture is tracking with this pivot in the museum. So museum architecture too has gone through, I think, a profound transformation. It is now, I would say we are sort of moving past the sort of grand gestures of the starchitect. There are very few architects left who do that kind of crazy starchitecture type of museum. So again, new software needs new hardware, and these are more open museums, more transparent museums, more welcoming museums, in a way softer museums, more porous, giving you the power instead of necessarily the curator. Anyway, it's a different kind of museum. And I think one of the realizations, and we'll get into all of this as well, is that perhaps we need to think not just about architecture when we think about a 500 million euro budget, but probably break it into 3 parts. We need to think about urbanism. How is it connected to the city? We need to think about green space. People love green spaces, especially post-pandemic. So a lot of resets in architecture as well. So now here we are with this third book, which is really about the art world system. And that was an opportunity to talk about what's around the museum, the system, the art world, which happened to be my personal sociological research going back to the 90s. And I think the big surprise of this book was this art world is the only art world we have. Everybody's sort of annoyed with it. If you read Thomas's chapter, he's sort of, has a lot of criticisms about the art world. But this is the one we have, and actually most of the participants are quite protective of these institutions. They don't want museums to go away. They don't want galleries to go away. They don't expect a paradigmatic change in this system. So nonetheless, we are in a different world. We do have to get off that high horse. And so let's have a conversation about that. And I'm going to start because the idea here was a kind of relay so that Thomas handed to me, but now I get to hand it to them. And I think we're going to start with Marion, with you, which is, since you're overseeing how many museums? 21. It's a small job. So how do you meet the moment? How do you open up the museum, in your opinion?
Yes, dear András, it's a little bit overwhelming to answer to this big question in the early morning and to have all these challenges. So we are in a certain moment where we have so many new possibilities, where you can feel the big change every day, every moment, in every part of your body. It's also a great opportunity. And on the other way, it's so much about fragility and resilience, human resilience, political resilience, financial resilience. But your question was how to open up our museums. And so you can see it in the National Gallery. So we have at the same time a Brancusi exhibition, which is about the essence of life and beautiful sculptures, and then people on the downstairs. And so we have a great diversification of our audiences. We try to initiate also the many discourses in society. It's not about only pleasing to, like in former times, to come and taste of what we thought the canon would be. We try to. It's more like a social experiment. So every program we try. We are at the beginning again and try to reach our audiences, but we have a lot to do. So we just have 2 exhibitions with Turkish content, and we are not sure if we really reach the Turkish communities in Berlin. So we are still trying out how to be more connected with the audiences.
Well, you started, your first words were resilience, so that made me kind of curious. When you do talk about resilience, the challenge of resilience, political resilience, what do you mean by that?
That means that, so we are speaking today about the art world, so this is also about speaking networks of people. And you could feel in the last weeks, especially in Germany, for the first time we heard with such a loud voice the keepers of bookshops. And the question was, again, the bookshop has a variety of offers in the bookshops, so it's you can't control it really. So it's so necessary that the people come together and we build new networks. Political resilience also means we are a very international institution. We are working with so many countries worldwide, and so when we working with Chinese colleagues and in other parts of the world, it's all the time we are speaking about resilience. How we are family in an own way. So we have Carol. She was also part of our program.
This is a museum director from Beijing.
Yeah, she has a great institution in Beijing. It's inner between. No, what's the name?
Inside Out Museum.
Inside Out Museum. And she told me their form of political resilience inside the huge country of China is to be more connected to history. Yes. So all the people who try to be more critical, and so they are so much deeply connected to history, not so much speaking about contemporary issues. That's also a form, going back to history, yes. Find there your strength.
All around the world, of course, we are conducting experiments about the museum and politics. I'm Hungarian, so I'm very happy to say we're kind of turning the page there. At the same time, I live in the United States, where we are, let's say, also having an interesting time. So it is the job of museum directors and the people around them to position the museum. And I like to say that the museum has survived world wars, famines, crises. It's really an institution sort of built to survive. You know, it can go in this sort of crouching position, sometimes for decades, until the air clears around it. But let's talk about one of the biggest challenges, which is technology. I'm going to go to Grace. So a few words about Grace. So I was conducting a Art Basel conversation in Basel, no, I think in Miami, I can't remember. And Grace comes up to me afterwards and says, you know, I'm an AI engineer at Google. She was involved in Google Shopping. And she said, you know, me and my colleagues, you know, we're highly educated, we love art, but we find museums totally intimidating and difficult to access. So she decided she's going to build an app called Artlas, which you can download on your phone, which is a universal museum companion. And I thought that was kind of really interesting, and we've ended up collaborating quite a lot. And I thought, well, if somebody can organize the world of shopping, then maybe they can organize the world of art. But as a data science question, it's quite complicated. So, you know, my question really to you is, in the largest sense, I mean, we all know that the question of the hour for institutions, for all of the art world, is technology. That is one challenge. This program you just mentioned, which we did in San Francisco, was all about how do we adapt to new technologies. How can new technology help museums open up to audiences? People like yourself and many others. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. So I think there is a thing happening for a long time which makes the museum world a little bit afraid of technology. And it's not because the technology is not going to work here, it's because like previous product like Google Arts and Culture or like some big corp like Arts and Culture programs are entering the world, like using the technology, how to use it here. And it, unfortunately, should I realize not to be in the way it really can help, is because museum is very different than other like consumer shopping and other places. And we need to understand how the museum inside is working and what is the day-to-day job they are having, how technology can be invisibly here to help the museum to operate more efficiently and seamlessly. It's not like we showing off our technology, we can do fancy VR or we can do like very good like fancy technology here. It needs to be very down to the ground and see how we can help here to be very like understand what is missing and what is the pinpoint. And after 2 years exploring in this field, I do discover there is an obvious gap here where technology can fill, is that the museum spend hundreds of years want to understand their audience like very much through different ways, use a lot of money and resource, and to send out surveys and to send people like in the gallery to ask questions. However, it didn't work that way because people don't know what they don't know and people don't know what they are behaving in the museum. So this is how we do at Google, that we are not asking people what you want, and we are providing the information to the people that they will be interested. And another part of the audience is that I am a zero starter for the art world, and my past 30 years are all in the technology world. So I know how to, from zero, to understand arts and culture, what the painful point is. And it's the accessibility and it's the like communication. Museum is able to deliver in the message, but cannot have the conversation with their audience. So this is because of the resource or a lot of reasons. And now with AI, we can do this like multi-language and like accessibility for blind people, for like hearing problem people, and to give them their personalized experience and make them feel connected. So this is the gap that I think we should fill.
And compared to big consumer companies that you dealt with at Google, has it been easy to deal with museums or has it been challenging?
You know
Be
how
honest.
I've been going
Be
through
honest.
here. It's quite challenging. And
In what way? Why? Why is it challenging?
First, I developed the patience. So at Google, we have OKR and we deliver very fast. And for working with museum, András mentioned every meeting to me, Grace, you need to be patient. And I think the patience comes from respect. So technology should come to this world with a lot of respect and patience to really hear what the situation really wants to need.
I want to ask actually everybody here. I mean, we all know there's a huge anxiety around AI. I mean, just in the whole society. I mean, we see that the whole news is full of this anxiety. Why is that? But particularly, why is there anxiety in the art world about AI? Anyone?
But I think Hito Steyerl once said, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, why is nobody talking about artificial stupidity? Yeah. So that I think is for the artists, it should be, you know, a tool or a material at best, but it shouldn't be taking over all of the creativity. You know, we have mention now of AI as being the new ready-made factory. There's also discussions about copyright, obviously, which is important to artists. So I think artists, and that's the great thing, and I think that's why there's anxiety, because they're always mostly at the outskirts of society in terms of, you know, the sensitivities and the sensibilities that artists are having. And ever since art has come to existence, artists were embracing, either euphorically or critically, the latest technologies. We wouldn't have Renaissance art the way that we look at it now if it hadn't been for the invention of the telescope, for example, or of the microscope later on. So it's clear, obviously, that artists are dealing with high tech and whatever it is that they can get their hands on. And I think people shouldn't be as scared if they know how to apply this in the right way. At the end of the day, sorry, but our brain works with an 80-watt dim light bulb. That's all we do right now. There's like, you know, 4 80-watt light bulbs on this stage here. You know, train an LLM model, next generation, and you end up with thousands of megawatt hours that could, you know, save the energy for many, many villages across the United States. So, you know, we can do a lot with those 80 watts, and I think artists should keep it that way.
Marion.
Yeah, I would say the anxieties are more connected to the really a danger of being controlled, and of the deep fakes the right-wing extreme movement uses already, of fake narration in Germany. So I'm proud of this aspect. In our DNA is the data protection. So when I was 15, we went on the streets for the data protection, and we didn't open our doors to the people who wanted to count how many Germans there were. You must imagine, it's crazy today, but it was like that. And I have many friends who had to leave other countries under difficult circumstances, and now feel so free and protected in Berlin. So this is something very, very important we have to protect. But on the other hand, we have a lot of hopes in AI. So on the one, you must imagine all these cultural institutions, they have a very old structure. So they have so much bureaucracy. So I have such a big hope to use it for, I say it in German, Reisekostenabrechnungen. So
That's one of those great German words, isn't it?
So the travel costs and so on. So we need many, many people to count how many travel costs the staff had. So we have hopes to use it in several parts of our cultural institutions to modernize them internally. I also believe in new forms of research tools. So I personally use it, and I have such a quick possibility to find out knowledge about other forms of knowledge. For example, in our Staatsbibliothek, we have at the moment a lab, and it's about the question how AI can help libraries. And we have new tools of research for the next generation. I call it the surrealist method. We bring together different fields, like vinyl records and receipts of food, of cooks. And then we try to find out with these different sources what kind of new knowledges you can have, and then use AI. And it's also a very creative field of, and transparency always was good for democracy.
Yeah, well, okay, I accept that, and I think, you know, this is clearly the biggest change for our field as for any other field. We have to very quickly learn to operate in this new world. Right now, I think it's fair to say most museums keep their data very separate from the internet. Everything is in closed databases. Maybe we go back to you, Grace, for 1 second. I mean, in your experience, speaking of data protection, why are these concerns, are these anxieties warranted? I mean, can a German museum comfortably engage an AI system that is probably running on American software? Is that something that they should feel comfortable doing at this hour?
Yes, I think for the data privacy side, and people has a lot of fear on the AI part, but actually AI does much better than social media and other day-to-day like things in your phone. Is because, for example, AI is like you feed AI what your like thought is. You tell AI about yourself, and for social media, it's like they are sneaking there and see what you're doing. It's different level of like privacy, and on the data privacy part, I think it has it's not about protection. It's about what really do you need to get from the visitors? As a museum tool or an AI in the museum, we really do not need that much data from the user. And a great guide for the visitors, you only need to know like how long you are staying here, what language you are speaking, and do you like contemporary art or do you like history? We do not need to know like did you have lunch somewhere else? What did you chat with your friend? So all this data, we do not have it at all. We only have those like very 3 lines of information a guide can provide to you.
Well, that's a good point. It's true that everybody is comfortable with Instagram, which is already getting us into a lot of trouble. Okay, let's go from technology to the other easy subject, which is money. So, Thomas, I know I'm asking a Duchamp scholar and a former very intellectual writer of academic articles, but you have spent your last part of your life at the intersection of corporations and institutions. And in fact, if you read the book, he is the one with whom we talk about sponsorship. So how is that working out these days? I mean, every institution is starving for money. Corporations have their own challenges. How are the rules changing around corporate sponsorships, and are there any sort of red lines that institutions should not cross?
First of all, thank you, but it's not an easy subject. Thank you for saying it's easy, talking about money, but it isn't, and it is definitely high on everybody's list. If we look at the numbers just in Germany, there's 14 billion euros going into the arts, public funding. That's 14 billion, more than any other country in the world, vis-a-vis 500 million from foundations and corporations and so forth. I don't think there's little money in Germany. The allocation is completely wrong. I mean, we have Berlin Modern, we have the Humboldt Forum, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of million euros of money that is sometimes hard-earned in Bavaria, going to Berlin for those amazing projects. I'm not arguing and debating these amazing projects and what it takes to pull them off the ground, but I think that in terms of allocation, there are dozens, if not hundreds, museums that are struggling. They don't have enough people, they don't have enough budget, they cannot buy and compete with the big collectors around the world. So there's a discrepancy there. That's one thing. And the other thing that I get 2,000 inquiries every year, because we do a lot in the arts. We consider ourselves leaders in the field.
2,000?
About 2,000, yeah. But they're getting more, and they're coming from bigger and bigger institutions. So I can only see ex negativo that it's not going well at this moment, as you yourself said. It's not a secret. Marion spoke of resilience. Gracie, you said in an interview not too many years ago, when you were still with Google, you said that Google is a beacon of support for DEI initiatives. So the DEI initiatives are no longer happening. Nobody talks about them anymore. Yeah. What I'm saying is political aspects can change. And what I think in terms of resilience is amazing when it comes to museums is they're looking for corporations to fund, to give budget, because their budget is decreasing because public funding is going down. But public funding is going down because the taxes of the big corporations are lacking, because the corporations are not doing as well as they probably did 2 or 3 years ago, at least some of them. So I think it's always, it's bad math to think that corporations will jump in where public funding is withdrawing. And I think that, you can make things, I just want to give one example because we're talking German numbers. Philipp Demand announced, 1 month, 2 months ago, the director of the Städel Museum, one of the most visited museums in Berlin, in Frankfurt, in this case, in Frankfurt. And he said he's building a 100 million euro endowment. That 100 million euro endowment, and I think he already has 25 million. And I know all the museums in the United States have an endowment, but here it's not necessary. It'll be the first museum with a real endowment, because he wants to have his museum be waterproof. He doesn't want to only rely on public funding, because he knows, look at situations in other countries, how fast the discourse can change, and how much politics can also influence what is hanging on the walls. So to keep that independence that I think we all love museums for, and that we as a corporation also want to build upon by creating, by giving complete creative freedom and curatorial integrity to whoever we work with, there are projects. We're all standing on and formats and ideas. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants to make your cultural institution a great one with a great future, and not relying too much on the parameters as they have been for the past decades.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, 100 million in the US would be an extremely small endowment. An institution the size of Städel should probably have multiple hundred millions of dollars. But this is the situation we're in. So what happens next? I mean, is the solution that you're going to focus on fewer projects and try to make a difference for fewer institutions? I mean, clearly the assumptions need to change. And I'm curious also, Marion, I mean, you have here dozens of institutions. It's a well-known fact that the state budgets are being reoriented to military uses all around Europe. So under what rock are you going to find the financing for these institutions? If Thomas is not helping you.
You can start, and I can continue. Do you help me?
Well, we are partners, so I think that's why we're sitting here. I think we need to focus, definitely. When I talk about hundreds of initiatives, we need to look at them. At the moment, I cannot justify within the company, that some markets are not able to launch their product, which is our core business, and which provides the salaries of 159,000 people around the world. If, Thomas goes on a shopping spree with museums and initiates more cultural initiatives, as necessary as they are, I don't see that increasing in the near future, and we just got to be very honest about that in terms of management of expectations.
Therefore?
Yeah, so I would say it's my daily burden about we speak now, and it's a real heavy burden. And so we have, first of all, we have these huge buildings, which are, of course, iconic. We are sitting here in the Mies van der Rohe Museum. We have so many iconic buildings of Sharon. And when a society decides to spend a lot of money, so it's so much money for the Staatsbibliothek, and it will be closed for 11 years. We just did Pergamon Museum. It will be reopened next June. So we have so many buildings. This is a kind of heritage the society have to help us. That must be the responsibility of the state. But then we have to diversify our sources. So of course I'm jealous that Philipp Demand is able to make an endowment. I'm not sure if we could do it as a statal institution here. It's a private tradition in Frankfurt and Hamburg, different to other cities. But we see there's a shift to private institutions among Europe. So Laurence Descartes, who is not any longer at Louvre, because also Louvre is a big building with so many challenges. She now goes through a private institution. My colleague Alicia Knaas, who was dismissed from National Gallery Prague 2 weeks ago, goes now to a private foundation in Warsaw. The former director of Tate goes now to a private institution. So this is interesting to see. I analyze this for myself, and we will in future need several different sources to be more independent also from politics. But for us, for the Stiftung Preußischer Kulturbesitz, because we are so big, means that next year, without any cutting at the moment, we will have a deficit of 20 million euro, because the rising of the staff costs and the rising of the energy costs. You know how the energy costs us.
Well, on the other hand, I'll walk into Gallery Max Hetzler yesterday. There was probably 20 million euros of art hanging on the wall, which may be sold this weekend. So, coming from the United States, while I really value the separation of institutional art world and commercial art world in this country, do you think that in the situation that you both have described, this sort of Olympian separation is possible still, or will there have to be some new set of alliances created?
Of course, we have quite strict ethic rules in the German art system, which I like. So we don't mix commercialized art with our public institutions. We ask from whom we get the money and receive the money. We ask with which country worldwide we are working with. So I'm going in 2 weeks to Saudi Arabia. We have to see. We have to.
Didn't work out for the Met in New York so much.
We have to see with which countries worldwide we work. So there are ethic rules behind. We have to. But we have to have a pact of solidarity with the big German companies. I'm very disappointed that many German companies are giving their money to foreign huge institutions and very few giving it to German institutions, with the exception of BMW. But that's really to see. The many giving to New York and other parts of the world. And there has been an other form of responsibility. And let me do a last remark, I'm sorry. When the chancellors are doing trips in other countries, this chancellor and the former chancellors, they're very often speaking about economy. And very often they face the situation that their partners want to speak about culture in Germany and in Europe. They are so much interested. And we have to think it more together.
We're going to open. I'm just curious, how many people have questions? Just so I have a sense of, okay, there will be some. All the people in the front row have questions. Interesting. The good students, the teachers' pets have questions. Okay, so, but quickly, I have one question from you guys more, but before we move on from money. Grace, I mean, you're from China originally. You live in the U.S., and you've observed Chinese museums, which have a very, how should I say, practical approach to finances as well. Describe a little bit how art commerce happens in the Chinese museum, how you can like buy stuff like from your phone while you're in the exhibition. But also, do you think that this new world of AI and data can provide a new revenue model for museums?
The answer is yes, and I think here is the logic that about Chinese like a museum. I see how it comes from bankruptcy, and nobody goes to our palace museum anymore. Like young people never go there, no one cares about it. And I read the news that the director goes to see like the palace walls, and all the things are peeled off, and they do not have money to fix it. And until one day they just do a one tiny thing and to shared a social media about like pretending to make fun of our like a king, like a king in,
emperor.
And to like have it dancing like a pop star or something to make fun of like the authorities, and the young people start to getting so interested on that, and they start to like produce a lot of fun, like humorous and like non-authority, not that serious stuff, and selling to the young audience, and then it becomes like bloom immediately in the social media, and for all the young people start to like lining on the line to purchase those like keychains and small stuff, and those things are like becoming the main income of the palace. Not only for that, then they start to getting a lot of like corp collaborations from big brands like Nike or other like international or national like brands, and they are chasing the palace museum right now and try to be with them and to get prosper. So that is like what I see in the past like 5 to 10 years, and it's completely changed from no one cares about to become a fashionable and like great things. Yes.
So last question for now. We'll open it up for questions, and then we'll come back for one last question. So this is about the future and our sort of vision for the art world and for institutions. And we know from reading the newspapers and from the discussions in the art world that there are many possible ways in which institutions can provide, let's say, a new value proposition. They can be sort of third spaces where people can spend their time. There's a growing discussion around art and wellness and how engagement with art can have health benefits. I'm curious for you all, what is sort of your future vision? You know, what is going to drive tomorrow's audiences to the art world? You want to go?
To coming back to your book.
Thank you. Which you have read overnight, since last night.
I found a very nice citation of William Kentridge, who I really adore. And he said, the gathering of many people at one place, at one time, to see, the closeness of people looking at the same thing. This will be still important in the future. And we can overcome also loneliness and transform it in happiness. And in a very a special example I can give you, when we close our Staatsbibliothek for 11 years, and 1,000 people are coming every day to look for a place to sit. We have only 700 places.
Yeah.
It's a big movement of people who want to enter the two buildings of the Stabi. And they only 20% want to take the books out of the shelves. And the others are coming with their iPads and so on. And they're sitting there and concentrate on reading, but feel in a nice... so gathering with other people, seeing each other, to concentrate in a very much loaded atmosphere. Yeah. I believe it will be even more relevant in the next years. Also the question, what is human? And also every object which is human-made will be more important. On the other hand, I'm very hopeful that we can use AI and the technological movements to modernize our institutions, to make them faster in reaction, to make them also more, aware of how we can become more independent of all other conditions.
Thomas.
Going back to your get off the high horse, I think that there's still a lot of red tape around museums. I think it's commendable what Marion is obviously doing with the great institutions like hers. But at the same time, you should really realize that a museum is not about something, but it is for someone. And Victoria Newhouse said it once. She said, like, a museum has to go from a restrained container to an exuberant companion. And I think that is important. And Orhan Pamuk, who wrote a manifesto for museums, he said, museums are not shouldn't be telling the story of nations, but the story of individuals. And I think if you think about that, you can get a little further already. And one more thing that I see now changing, also in terms of how do you get to budget, what corporations can you approach? There's a discussion, I think only for the past 2 years now, that focuses on mental health, that focuses on museums as areas and locations where the local health or the mental health or the health of those visitors is actually improving. And Grace, you talked openly about your mother's cancer, and you talked about how that has changed your way you look at art, because she was terminally ill, but art changed her around to a certain degree. And I love that you told that story. And I think this is one of the things that this can be going towards.
I definitely think that 10 years from now, when we make the pitch to our politicians for why support the arts, we're going to be talking about health.
Yeah.
If we could change health outcomes by 2%, we have a very strong argument for inviting people to museums. Okay, we'll take a few questions and then we'll finish up here. Who has questions?
Hi, I'm Pavlos. I have a question for Ms. Ackermann. You mentioned earlier one of the big priorities you have in your role is to work with international partners. I was wondering, how do you go about making the decision of what the international partners will be in terms of region in the world, which museums in that part of the world? And given that you are looking after 21 museums, how do you kind of prioritize all the museums you're looking after?
Well, thank you for your question. So we made a strategy for the next 5 years. So I didn't do it alone. We did it in a group for the foundation, and we will focus on some parts of the world. So first of all, Middle and Eastern Europe will be very important, because we still think that we have in a field of museum do more. And we just founded 2 weeks ago in Prague a new circle of also Hungarian people are a part of it. We will be in Budapest next spring. It's called MUSE, Museen in Europe, Changing Perspectives. Then we said we have to, of course, stay with our friends in the western part of the world. So we have deep connections with United States. You see it in the program of National Gallery, and also with Oxford in England, and of course to continue, which is strong. And then you can imagine that very often we are asked from people from other countries. For example, Morocco. Morocco has a king, and the people are very much interested to develop very fast the museum's landscape. So we went there, I went there personally, and we have a new cooperation on several fields to work together. And they have beautiful new museum concepts. For example, a museum between Rabat and Fez, which has a Jewish collection and an Islamic art collection. And you're looking from the one window to a graveyard, Jewish graveyard, and the other window from the Islamic. And so new concepts are also coming from other countries. And then we have ethnological collections, so we have connections to so many countries in African and Asian parts of the world, but the whole team, the more than 2,000 people, have their own ways of connecting.
Hello, my name is Sam Lowenberg. My question is, we've seen really tremendous disruption across publishing, journalism, music in the last few years, in large part because of a lot of technological innovation. Are you seeing a drop off in audiences for museums? And if so, how are you trying to address that?
Is the moderator allowed to answer the question? By the way, he's a journalist. He's just pretending to be an audience member. He writes for The Economist. Old friend. Generally speaking, it's sort of good news and bad news for audience. In most parts of the world, museums, as of last year, have more or less reclaimed their pre-pandemic audiences. So they're more or less on trend. They're now back to where they were. They're not, On the other hand, it's like in so many parts of our lives, it's a world of haves and have-nots. So you have the Louvre with 8 million, you have the Met with 5 million, you have a couple of Asian museums with more. And then if you go to a provincial, out-of-town museum on a Wednesday morning, and it's empty, which is one of the reasons I completely agree with this idea of the museum as a third space. Just as the libraries, we have the architect of the libraries right here. These are the spaces where people should hang out. They should be co-working spaces. They should be utilized for other functions. What we're not talking about is digital visitation, which is often 10x, 20x of in-person visitation, which is one of the reasons why we need to completely think in new ways about technology. Finally, are those numbers good numbers? They're pretty good numbers, but sadly, we're still living in societies where less than 10%, often less than 5% of the population comes back regularly to museums. So we have a very large sense of ourselves, but we remain a fairly small world.
Can I say something? Yeah. So I think from what we've been exploring in the Silicon Valley, and museum is actually very promising to be the next prospering industry, is because now people's attention from the social media start to getting off, because more and more content creating on the social media are by AI, and they are converging into those repetitive and not interesting stuff. But museum is a place where the authenticities and also the human creativities, which are becoming more and more important, and to get people's attention again, because the internet and the social media itself is losing its power and losing its interest and fun and charm, and museums are coming back to stage. That's really is happening, and I think museum really do not need to worry about this. It's technology needs to worry about that. And the software engineer needs to worry about that.
But I must say, I was really overwhelmed by the numbers of visitors in Chinese museums and so many young people. I was really jealous. We don't have it here in Berlin. It's not comparable, and we would like to have it, of course, but we have so different ways to approach it. So, for example, they had a bring your pet day in the museum. So you could bring your cats, and then so many people in social media wanted to come, and 200 could come, and so that's fascinating. But I think we couldn't do it here. So it's different in Europe in a way. But there we have to. We have to, especially here in Berlin, we have to be more self-confident and to have bigger questions with our programming, and we can do something. But there are other factors we are dependent on. That Ryanair now is not flying anymore to Berlin, and we have a not working airport, and this is really bad for our number of visitors.
So one more question in the front row.
Thank you. So to react also, my name is Lola Volonakis. I'm an opera singer and an artist. And it's really interesting because also in the opera world, they are struggling to have the young population coming in. It's exactly the same problem that the museum are facing. So actually what I'm doing, now I'm much more an artist and I'm working with the new technology, and I wanted to share more about what's coming, what I experiences actually. So the thing is, I thought when I stopped UDK here in Berlin, Universität der Künste, it will be really difficult as an opera singer to perform. And actually what I see, it's all the opera houses coming to me because I created my digital clone. And because they understood, with the money, they can now ask new sponsor to come in because they are starving about money, because they are always facing the same problem than the museum. But actually it's interesting, with all the performances that I did as an artist, it's much more the corporate world who are opening their arms and giving money and helping a lot new artists to live. And when I have to perform, I can do whatever I want.
That's great.
And and it's so strange because I'm trying so much to catch some people, because of course as an opera singer at the beginning I couldn't create my connection into the contemporary art world, and I'm facing a big wall in front of me, and the museum, the cultural institution are not so much interesting about the new type of artist. And after we can see only, I wanted to hear what's your reaction about the...
Okay.
Sorry.
So do you have a question
Yeah,
as well? Okay.
I wanted to ask what's your opinion when you see private artists like Refik Anadol, who they have to build their own data museum and to show new type of artists, and we are not seeing that much new artists and digital artists into museums.
So, I actually, full disclosure, I worked with Refik on his new museum, which is opening in 3 weeks. No classic institution has the resources to do what he has been able to do. They don't have the space, they don't have the money, they don't have... It's becoming a separate industry. Actually, if you buy my last book, I say that we may be looking at a world where the digital art industry splits off from the classic art world, much the same way as Hollywood split off from live theater into a different industry. It's a different business model. It's going to be fantastic, by the way. It's opening in June. I'm going to go to our last question. By the way, there's some great technological art just downstairs. There are Beeple's robots are dancing just one floor below us. Yeah, no, yeah, okay. So I'm under strict orders to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes because otherwise Klaus will come and throw us out. And I want to finish today with a simple question, one from each of you. We're going to start with Marion and then Grace and then Thomas. And what I want to know is what each of you wants from the other. Yes. So Marion, what would you like from companies like BMW and from the AI sector to make your job easier?
That's a nice question. I really like it. So, Thomas, so what we really need are stable partnerships with companies, with sponsors, connected through content, through common discussion, through common visions. They can be individual, so we can create an own vision, BMW and Foundation, for example. But to have a planning possibility. We need contracts for 5 years, for example, and not only for a year. So, and from you, I would wish to have the support, because we feel overwhelmed by these technological possibilities and challenges, and we are not prepared. And on the other hand, we have the anxieties to use American systems and so. So how could we, in a very pragmatic way, solve our problems we have, the real problems, overcoming bureaucracy? We will have a generational shift from the years 30 on, and here, especially here in this country, because the baby boomers are retired all at the same moment. It will mean 30% of the staff of the foundation, for example, will retire in 3 years. So it's a challenge, and we can see in which part of the institutions we can have the help of AI and technology.
Great. And by the way, speaking of age, with regard to audiences, the previous question, the single biggest demographic reality in our society up here in the global north is we're getting older. So institutions are obsessed with young audiences. The great opportunity from simple marketing terms is the older audiences. In 5 years, 8 years, there will be more old people than young people. In 20 years, there will be more people 85 and older than 18 and under. So maybe we need to think about what we're going to do with that audience. So now on to Grace. Grace, how can big companies like BMW and big institutions like the ones that Marion is working with, how can they help you realize your dream of growing Artlas into this universal museum companion app?
Yes, and I think the mission of Artlas is to build the bridge between museum and audience. And the audience that is the consumer part, and the museum, we really need a little bit of trust on the technology that we can handle the data privacy, we can handle the dive into the system to offer the help. And we listened to more than 45 museums and directors, and I think only if it opens a door, you will see the magic of the technology. And Mori Art Museum already see that, like, they never understand that they have how many language speakers in their museum during Christmas. They never understand, like, what is the heat map in the museum. So this is the power of technology, and we need a little bit of trust that to enter. We are now from a big corp stuff, and startup is very transparent and very cautious. And for Thomas, I think you already helped a lot to inviting us here, and I feel like my 10 years of BMW I drive really paid off.
Wow, there you go, the big endorsement.
Yes, all my friends are driving Tesla, but I still stick with BMW.
Okay, Thomas, you get the last word as our co-moderator. And I want to ask both Thomas of BMW, but also Thomas, the writer, the Duchamp expert, What do you hope from AI, and what do you hope from museums like Marion's?
Well, if we leave it on a personal level, I want Marion Ackermann to come and visit the BMW plant in Berlin. We are one of the biggest industrial employers with a plant that produces BMW Motorrad. They just have produced the 4th million Motorrad here since the plant opened in 1969. And I'm saying this because there are about as many people working for your institution, 2,000 plus 2,300 people that are working in the plant, and they are creating, I think you have an overall budget of 400 million. That's the revenue that they are creating. You know, like making money that can be spent in this amazing way that you are doing it for these institutions. So, but I think there's a relationship there. And we just had the director of the opera, of the State Opera, Unter den Linden there, and she loved to see how, you know, these things come into being smack in the middle of Spandau. So this is my invitation to you. That's what I would love. And our contractual agreements are always 3 years because we want to give our partners the security that they need to, you know, to plan ahead. And when it comes to Grace, keep buying our product and convince your colleagues, you know, to not drive whatever. And then the other thing is that with the multimodal generative AI that you're working with, you know, never leave out of sight the human centricity. This should retain, and because we don't need another distraction, we need to be able to focus more. And if your amazing Artlas can achieve that by opening up the door to art, that's fantastic.
Great. Well, I hope we gave you like a little taste of the future. We, both its economic and its political and its financial and its technological and its institutional and organizational aspects. And if you're still curious, there are a bunch of books back there. I will even sign some if you want. I really appreciate that you all came. And with this, first of all, thank you to the three of you. And now go and enjoy the art, the Brancusi, the robots, the rest of Gallery Weekend. Thank you very much for coming.